country that had gotten a little soft.
Change cannot happen overnight. What can we do? We've been a little bit lazy.
I was in chronic pain, and my family struggling to make ends meet, food and gas prices going up, even keeping my job was iffy. Then I learned about a new miracle drug made in Washington, D.C., Spenditol. Spenditol is Washington's answer to all the painful problems Americans face. How to borrow $800 billion for a stimulus that didn't create jobs or fix the economy? Spenditol.
Spenditol is not for everyone. Side effects may include a mountain of government debt piled on our kids, a sudden loss of freedoms, higher prices for everything, leaving our kids a lesser America than we had. Ask your doctor or congressman if your conscience is strong enough for Spenditol.
And it's so popular in Washington, we have to import trillions more of it from China. Spenditol makes you feel better now and pushes off the really bad stuff till later, for them to deal with.
Call the White House and Congress. Tell them, stop spending it all.
Welcome back into the Palmetto Conservative Show here on the Conservative Broadcast Media Network. It is good to be back with you and continuing this conversation, really more of a rant this evening, but on the whole notion of looking presidential. Now, if you could see me through the radio, and believe me, I have a face for radio, but you would believe that I am looking presidential as I sit here, and carry on. But this isn't about me looking presidential. This is about the president looking presidential. So, the president, again, in my view, we had a boxing ring with two competitors in there, one being Benghazi consulate and the other one being Hurricane Sandy. And in the battle for looking presidential, the president succeeded in looking presidential as Hurricane Sandy. But in the area where he should have, Benghazi consulate, he definitely blew it. Now, why do I say that? He got back to Washington. He's, down in the Situation Room. I wonder if he's also getting daily intelligence briefings while we're at it. He's probably getting daily weather reports anyway. But, is he actually getting intelligence briefings? But I digress. He's actually talking to the media. Hasn't held a White House press conference in a while, but he's talking to the media. Goes out looking tough, talking about how difficult things are, makes statements like, we're gonna be out there, we're going to leave no one behind. Really? You're going to leave nobody behind? A natural disaster here on U.S. soil, in states that have National Guard forces that are trained and positioned and tasked with dealing with these things. But you, Mr. President, are not going to leave anybody behind in that situation. But when it comes to sovereign U.S. territory overseas, in our consulate, not only did you leave our people behind, but the absence of your leadership resulted in the deaths of 4 Americans, including our ambassador. The president got up, told the media, hey, I've told my government. And by this, it's not like you and me out here in the, the huddled masses saying, my government. No, it's, in his case, my government. I've told my government. We don't want to ask the question of whether we can do something. We want to ask the question about how are we going to get it done. I've told my government, no red tape, no bureaucracy. Well, Mr. President, with all due respect, if you'd have been saying that to your government when you took office 4 years ago and told them to go look at what they do and ask themselves, where do we have red tape? Where do we have too much bureaucracy that gets in the way of good government, of effective government? Then perhaps we wouldn't be worried about this, because it would take care of itself. Because last I checked, you were actually going the other direction. You've been creating more bureaucracy. You've been creating more regulations. So I guess in my warped mind, the question is, how in the world would you know bureaucracy if it bit you in the nose? But I digress, because the focus here was looking presidential. Folks, I'm not President of the United States, and I'm not claiming that I have the skills to be President of the United States. Although compared to the incumbent, I'm feeling like I may qualify. Lord knows I've got more real-world experience. For that matter, so does the guy who delivers pizzas. But I have to ask, as an effective executive, let's leave the leader of the free world out for just a minute. Let's leave the commander-in-chief of the United States military, the strongest, most capable, most competent, most well-equipped military in the world. Let's put those things aside. Let's focus on the role of the chief executive. Now, the president is afraid that if he was on the campaign trail, people would accuse him of not looking presidential, just looking political. Now, I would argue that the last 4 years in the White House have been nothing but political and not presidential, but that's my opinion. If we look at this particular situation, and I don't mean to downplay, I don't mean to diminish the size and scope and significance of the storm. Hurricane Sandy was horrible. It caused incredible devastation and regrettably loss of life. But that said, we have agencies of government whose sole purpose, or primary purpose, if not sole, is to deal with these sorts of natural disasters. And in the case of a presidential re-election campaign, me personally, I think he would have looked more presidential had he gotten up behind a podium, sans teleprompter, of course, and said, here's the situation. We have a hurricane that we are monitoring very closely. The appropriate agencies of government, National Weather, NOAA, Homeland Security, National Guard Bureau, communications with the governors and everything. Everything is in place. The appropriate executives within the administration are either in the Situation Room or their delegate is in the Situation Room and they are on call and they are ready to go. And I have designated the following individual to be the point person to ensure that coordination takes place. And I am in regular communications with that person. Make it the vice president if it makes you feel better. It doesn't make me feel better if it were this vice president, but whatever. Chief of Staff, Department of Interior, I don't care. Pick someone who's supposed to be a competent executive who can coordinate and manage. Because they're not doing anything. They're not the ones who are directing resources to go someplace. Because if they were, they should be the head of that particular agency. They're not the ones who are out there pushing a backhoe and removing sand or moving sand into place. Put a competent executive in charge. And then explain to people that I'm getting regular updates, and in the event that there is a matter that comes up that requires presidential coordination, I am in constant communications and available. So while I let my capable team take care of this situation, I'm going to continue on and conduct this re-election. Because, well, not to make his case for him, but I haven't done all the damage that I want to do in 4 years. I need another 4. If he had actually surrounded himself with capable and competent people, he could do that. He could let people know, hey, you're in charge of this particular area. Your authority is already defined by statute, by enabling legislation, by the rule of law. Let's not go down the rule of law path just now, okay? But if you have capable lieutenants, if you will, other executives, then they should be able to do the job. Because the opposite of this, and to me, that would be looking presidential. Because then you are the leader. You are the chief executive. You are not just one of the guys down there picking up a bucket and a mop and coming to the response of a natural disaster. But the opposite, that something like this, that again, there are agencies of government whose primary or sole purpose is to be prepared to deal with natural disasters. And the thought that if there were a natural disaster somewhere in this country that only the President of the United States could deal with it is horrifying. But that's my opinion. What he's done in coming back to Washington and hunkering down in the Situation Room and listening to weather reports, and best as I can tell, not doing anything, and quite frankly, he shouldn't be, because he's supposed to be the leader of the free world and not the chief cook and bottle washer. Has made him look smaller still, at least in my eyes. And you'll note I haven't even talked about policy, but we'll get to that at some point along the way this evening. But I'm confident that there will be no red tape and no bureaucracy when it comes to a situation like this. Because when it comes to big government assistance, when it comes to handing out other people's money, this president has demonstrated time and time again, there is nothing that'll stand in the way of that happening. Making a difficult decision, different story. But when it comes to handing out other people's money, you can bet darn sure that this president's got a handle on the job. Now, you may have a different view. You may look at it exactly the opposite. That the president coming back to Washington to oversee the recovery efforts and the support efforts and the relief efforts, that's looking presidential. Well, as for me, I'm tired of the superficial nonsense. I'm tired of the emphasis and the focus that we place on appearances. And I am longing to see competence in our leaders. And it starts at the top. I, for one, think it would have looked much more presidential had this president had a competent staff to respond to this matter, and that he would have continued along the campaign path, again, with appropriate communication